What I find a little odd about your contribution, especially as did you say you were a police officer?
That's right.
Is that the sentences are longer than ever before. They've gone up by 40% since 1993, and you think that you've watched an increase in leniency.
Absolutely. So from my experience with sentences, we've often seen sort of specific example would be around the paedophile hunters.
In politics today, something strange is happening. The line between what feels true and what is actually true is getting blurrier by the day. Facts used to settle arguments. Evidence used to end debates. But increasingly, it feels like facts are taking a backseat, while personal feelings are driving the conversation. And that brings us to a moment that perfectly captures this growing divide. Because what happens when someone whose entire career is built on evidence, someone trained to gather facts, verify information, and follow the truth wherever it leads, suddenly runs straight into data that completely contradicts what they believe? That's exactly what unfolded during this exchange. A police officer with 15 years of experience on the force calls into a radio show hosted by James O'Brien. He's confident, he's certain. From his perspective, the justice system has gone soft. In his mind, sentences are getting lighter, criminals are getting away too easily, and the courts simply aren't tough enough anymore. It's a belief you hear all the time, in conversations, on social media, on talk radio, the idea that criminals aren't punished the way they used to be. But here's the twist. James doesn't respond with opinion. He doesn't respond with ideology. He responds with numbers, cold, verifiable, nationwide statistics that track sentencing trends across decades. And those numbers tell a completely different story. Instead of getting shorter, prison sentences have actually gotten longer, significantly longer. So what happens next becomes a fascinating and honestly revealing clash between personal experience and measurable reality. Because when those two collide, one of them has to give. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's take a look at the moment itself. And after we watch what happened, we'll break down exactly why this exchange says a lot about the way political conversations are happening right now.
What I find a little odd about your contribution, especially as did you say you were a police officer?
That's right.
Is that the sentences are longer than ever before. They've gone up by 40% since 1993, and you think that you've watched an increase in leniency.
Absolutely. So from my experience with sentences, we've often seen sort of specific example would be around the paedophile hunters and that type of offending. A lot of suspended sentences around that type of offending, which I would ordinarily have expected custodial sentences for. I'm all for rehabilitation.
We can pick specific areas, I suppose, but the numbers are not debatable. The average custodial sentence for an indictable offence in 1993 was 16 months, and now it's 22 and a half months. So there's been an increase in prison terms by about 40% over the last nearly 30 years, and you think there's been a reduction.
For me personally,
but we have to stop there, because that is a beautiful illustration of the two questions that we're asking today. Here are the facts. Why do the British public believe the opposite? And you as a police officer are just denying the evidence of your own eyes and ears. There's been a 40% increase in prison terms. That's the severity of sentences. That's not the total number of sentences. It's gone up from 16 months to 22 and a half months. How long have you been a police officer?
15 years now.
So over the course of your career, prison sentences have got longer, and yet you're here to tell me that they've got shorter.
Yeah, from my experience, it seems.
You can't keep saying from my experience. This report has counted all of them, Reece.
Yeah,
it's counted all of the sentences across all of England and Wales for all of the years between 1993 and 2025, and they've gone up by 40% in length, in severity. And yet you're here as a police officer with 15 years on the clock to say, oh, well, in my experience, the opposite is true, as if that matters.
Sorry, so are you saying from the statistics they're saying that the actual sentence is longer opposed to more people are being sent to prison?
The severity of sentences, which has led to, more people are being sent to prison as well. I thought I'd made this pretty clear in the introduction. So the number of people being sent to prison has gone up from 124 per 100,000 in the population to 139 people per 100,000 in the population. And the severity of the sentence has increased since 1993, so under Labour and the Conservatives, by 40%. And I don't want to fall out, but it doesn't matter how many times you say, in my experience, the conclusion you've arrived at as a consequence of your experience is the polar opposite.
Yeah, that seems wild that's the case. But if that's
it's not going to change your mind, though, is it? These bloody statistics, these numbers, these actual facts.
Well, I think we all can draw conclusions from what statistics come from and how we arrive at them.
You can draw one conclusion, and the conclusion is that the severity of sentences has increased by 40% since 1993.
Where are these statistics from, James?
This is David Gauke, the former Justice Secretary, who spent the last 6 months looking at all of the numbers.
What a trustworthy source that is.
Well, he's not an MP.
Was he not a former MP?
He's a former MP, yes, a former Secretary of State for Justice. Well, so nominally, your boss.
I rest my case.
What case are you resting there, Rhys?
That statistics, how you want to present them, is how I'd argue.
Okay, and where do you get yours from?
Ultimately, from experience.
This is from the Independent Sentencing Review.
Right. Why? The other question I'd want to know, James.
I just want to know where you get your overall national figures from, if not from the Independent Sentencing Review.
I wasn't talking from my national figures. I was talking from lived experience, James, and the amount of time.
But where do you get your national figures from? Because you just said you can dismiss these. You said, I think, case closed, or I rest my case. So what is your case? Where do you get your numbers from?
I don't think they're my exact words, in fairness, James. But
you said I rest my case.
The point I make is that I think statistics can be leaned whichever way. So
which ones do you prefer?
For me personally, James,
No, for the whole country. That's what the Independent Sentencing Review... We can't all have our own statistics. You have 60 million people in the country. They all choose their own statistics. The ones that the government will use to legislate and the ones that the population uses to understand what is happening and the numbers involved. I give you the Independent Sentencing Review. You, Rhys, 15 years in the police service, give me...
I personally think for the country...
No. Where do I go? The website, the statistical collation, the expertise that has been deployed to count all of the instances that we're discussing. The Independent Sentencing Review is good enough for everybody else, but what do you use instead?
Personal experience, lived experience.
Right.
That's all I can draw from, other than a former MP giving me some statistics.
No. It's the Independent Sentencing Review that he is using to explain the facts, in some cases, obviously, pointlessly.
Well, listen, if they're the facts, they're the facts. But from my lived experience...
They're the facts, but I know better from my lived experience.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying from my lived experience...
It is what you're saying. It's exactly what you're saying. I've given you 5 opportunities now to tell me where we should go instead of the Independent Sentencing Review, and you've said my lived experience.
I can only go from my lived experience.
No. You can go from the audited, collected statistical facts that deploy countless people to determine exactly what is going on in the country. You can go to that, or you can just go to your lived experience, and that's fine. I've done my best.
What we just witnessed there was honestly a perfect example of how a personal reality bubble forms. And more importantly, how fiercely people defend it, even when the evidence right in front of them says otherwise. Think about what actually happened in that exchange. Rhys called in with a very strong belief. In his mind, the justice system has gone soft. He believes criminals are receiving lighter sentences and that courts simply aren't as tough as they used to be. And to be fair, that's a belief you hear quite often in political conversations. But here's where the conversation takes an interesting turn. James doesn't respond with opinion or ideology. He responds with verifiable national data. Statistics compiled through the Independent Sentencing Review, examining sentencing trends across England and Wales over decades. And the numbers are crystal clear. The average custodial sentence has increased by about 40% since the early 1990s. So when presented with that information, you might expect a debate about the data itself. Maybe a discussion about the methodology, the sources, or alternative statistics. But that's not what happened. Instead, the response shifted away from evidence and towards something else entirely. Personal experience. The argument became essentially, well, from what I've seen personally, it feels different. And that moment reveals something important about how modern political conversations often unfold. Because when hard data conflicts with personal perception, many people don't question the perception, they question the data. Even when that data comes from a comprehensive national review conducted by experts who spent months analyzing the numbers. What makes this exchange especially striking is that Rhys is a police officer, someone whose profession is built on gathering facts, evaluating evidence, and presenting information objectively. Yet when the evidence challenged his personal narrative, the discussion shifted away from facts and toward feelings. James's closing remark really captured the heart of the issue. If you were arrested by someone relying purely on personal impressions, you might expect a very different outcome than what the actual statistics show. And that's the bigger point here. This moment wasn't just about sentencing statistics. It highlighted a much larger tension that shapes political debate today. The gap between what the numbers show and what people feel is happening. And when those two realities collide, it raises an important question for all of us. Which one should guide our understanding of the world? Let me know what you think about that exchange down in the comments.